Welcome to the newest version of FOFSIM. The most important new feature of this version is the realistic simulation of a constant speed propeller. So in this video we will take a look at the inner workings of a constant speed propeller and talk about its advantages. The constant speed propeller adds a new RPM lever that controls the propeller speed and an RPM readout. There are also a couple of new views like the prop forces view. This view shows how thrust and torque of the propeller are made up from lift and drag at the propeller blades. FOFSIM simulates the propeller blades as small wings that rotate around the propeller shaft. Here you can see one of the blades. The blade is drawn at the moment when it sticks out towards you. At this moment, the blade rotates downwards. Now, because the propeller rotates and moves through the air, it experiences an airflow. This airflow is drawn as a cyan arrow. And exactly like on the wing or the elevator, this airflow creates lift and drag. To obtain thrust, we have to do a little trick. First, we compute the sum of lift and drag. This gives us the total aerodynamic force that acts on the propeller blade. This force is drawn in violet. And now comes the trick that is shown in the thrust and torque view. This view splits the total aerodynamic force into thrust and torque. That works because you can split the force in any way you want to obtain the components you are interested in. Now thrust points into the direction of the propeller shaft and pulls the aircraft forward. And propeller torque points against the direction of rotation and must be overcome by engine torque. Notice that the violet total aerodynamic force that acts on the propeller blade is the same in both views. The only difference is the way in which we split the total aerodynamic force. The numbers below the propeller show blade angle and angle of attack. A blade angle is the angle between the blade and the rotational plane. And angle of attack is the angle between the blade and the airflow. These angles are different because the flow tilts backwards. That's because the flow also has an axial component due to the acceleration of the air by the propeller and due to the movement of the aircraft. The prop flow view shows how the airflow at the propeller blade is composed. Here you can see that the largest flow components are due to the rotation of the propeller blade, that's the orange arrow, and due to the movement of the aircraft through the air, that's the dark cyan arrow. Additionally, there are two more so-called induced flows that result from the acceleration of the air by the propeller. But they are comparatively small because the propeller accelerates a large amount of air and therefore the acceleration of that air is rather small. If you add all these flows, then you get the total airflow at the propeller blade. All flows are computed in real time and all changes are visualized accordingly. Next, let's take a closer look at the function of the blue RPM lever. This lever controls the propeller speed. Propeller speed is measured in revolutions per minute, or RPM for short. The RPM readout shows that our propeller currently spins at about 2071 RPM. If we move the RPM lever backward, RPM decreases. And if we move it forward, RPM increases. The RPM lever is connected to a so-called governor that controls the propeller speed. This governor adjusts the blade angle of the propeller to obtain the desired RPM. To slow the propeller down, the governor increases the blade angle. This increases the resistance of the propeller against the airflow, and the propeller slows down. Here you can nicely see how the blade angle changes. At a higher blade angle, the propeller takes larger bites of air at each revolution. Therefore, this setting is also called coarse pitch. Conversely, to speed the propeller up, the governor decreases the blade angle. This decreases the resistance of the propeller to the airflow, and the propeller speeds up. At a lower blade angle, the propeller takes smaller bites of air at each revolution. Therefore, this setting is also called fine pitch. Now it is important to note that the RPM lever does not directly control the blade angle, but the propeller speed. And it is the job of the governor to adjust the blade angle to obtain the desired propeller speed. The governor also maintains the set propeller speed over a wide range of engine power and airspeed. For instance, if we set the propeller speed of 2100 RPM and reduce engine power, then the governor decreases the blade angle to prevent the propeller from slowing down. Note that although we reduced power, the propeller still spins at 2100 RPM. Conversely, if we increase power, then the governor increases the blade angle to prevent the propeller from speeding up. So no matter if we reduce or add power, the governor adjusts the blade angle to maintain the set RPM. Now, a constant speed propeller adds complexity and failure points. So you might ask, what's the benefit? Well, there are actually two benefits: better performance and less pilot workload. To understand the performance aspect, let's take a quick look at the performance graph of the Rotax 912 engine. This diagram shows various engine parameters in relation to engine RPM at sea level. Now this line shows the maximum engine output at full throttle for the various RPMs. And here we see that the maximum engine output of 100 horsepower is available only at the maximum engine speed of 5800 RPM. If we reduce RPM to the maximum continuous engine speed of 5500 RPM, then engine output reduces to the maximum continuous engine output of 94 horsepower. And if we reduce the engine speed further, then maximum engine output decreases accordingly. Therefore, if we want maximum power or maximum continuous power, then we have to maintain these engine speeds. And that's where constant speed propeller comes handy, because it does just that. The engine performance diagram shows the implementation of this performance graph in FOFSIM. This diagram also has dynamic readouts for the current values of engine power and torque. They are computed in real time and all changes are visualized accordingly. To appreciate the value of a constant speed propeller, let's do an experiment that converts our constant speed propeller to a fixed pitch propeller. I have prepared a situation at full power and an indicated airspeed of 80 knots. And I have locked all flight parameters to prevent the aircraft from pitching or accelerating so that we can better compare any changes at the propeller. Next, we lock the blade angle by pressing the lock prop button. That converts our constant speed propeller to a fixed pitch propeller because it locks the blade angle to the current blade angle of 23.9 degrees. Therefore, the RPM lever has no function anymore. Let's store this situation. Next, let's see what happens if we fly slower. Let's reduce our airspeed to say 60 knots and store this situation as well. Now, if we compare the two situations, we see that slowing down causes a drop in RPM as well as in engine power from 97 horsepower to 93 horsepower. And the question is, why do we see a drop in engine power although we didn't touch the throttle? The explanation lies in the direction of the airflow at the propeller. If we compare the two airflows, we notice that at 60 knots, the airflow is tilted less to the back than at 80 knots. That happens because the axial flow due to the movement of the aircraft at 60 knots is smaller than at 80 knots. Now, this change in direction caused an increase in angle of attack at the propeller blade. And that caused an increase in resistance against the airflow. Therefore, the propeller slowed down. Now please remember that we have seen earlier that the engine can't deliver full power if it's not running at maximum RPM. Therefore, the RPM drop also caused a power drop and the engine no longer produces full power. If we reduce the airspeed further to say 40 knots, then RPM and engine power decrease even more. Now 40 knots is a typical speed during the takeoff run, and we have lost almost 10% of engine power. So one of the main disadvantages of a fixed pitch propeller is that it can't provide full engine power during the takeoff run. Next, let's see how a constant speed propeller behaves at 40 knots. For this, we will now unlock the propeller, which converts it back to a constant speed propeller. Let's unlock it. And here we see that the constant speed propeller also delivers full power at 40 knots. Why? Because a constant speed propeller adapts to the changing airflow by decreasing its blade angle. That decreases the angle of attack of the propeller blades and the resistance against the airflow. Therefore, the propeller speeds up to maximum RPM and the engine again delivers full power. Next, we return to our fixed pitch propeller and find out what happens if we fly faster than 80 knots. Let's increase our airspeed to say 100 knots and store this situation as well. Here we see that speeding up caused the propeller to overspeed. Why? The answer again lies in the changing airflow at the propeller. A faster airspeed causes more axial flow from the front. Therefore, the airflow at 100 knots is tilted more to the back than at 80 knots. This causes a decrease in angle of attack at the propeller blade, which causes a decrease in resistance against the airflow. Therefore, the propeller speeds up. And because the propeller already was at maximum RPM, it now exceeds its speed limit. Therefore, we have to throttle back to keep RPM within limits. Unfortunately, this again means that we are losing power. Additionally, the need to throttle back increases our workload. Next, let's see how our constant speed propeller behaves at 100 knots. For this, we will again unlock the propeller, which will convert it back to a constant speed propeller. Let's unlock it. And here we see that the constant speed propeller does not exceed its speed limit. Why? Because the constant speed propeller again adapts to the changing airflow, now by increasing its blade angle. Here you see the increase in blade angle. That increases the angle of attack of the propeller blades and their resistance to the airflow. Therefore, the propeller slows down to maximum RPM without the need to throttle back and is again able to deliver full engine power. So to summarize, we saw that the fixed pitch propeller can deliver maximum engine power only at one defined aircraft speed. This aircraft speed depends on the blade angle of the propeller. In our experiment, we locked the blade angle to 23.9 degrees. At this blade angle, our propeller can deliver full power only at an aircraft speed of 80 knots. If the aircraft flies slower, the propeller rotates slower and the engine produces less than maximum power. And if the aircraft flies faster, we have to throttle back to prevent the propeller and engine from overspeeding. In contrast, a constant speed propeller can deliver maximum engine power over a wide range of aircraft speed. That's because the governor adjusts the blade angle to the changing airflow, so that the propeller always provides just the right amount of resistance to spin at maximum RPM. This also reduces our workload, because all we have to do is to set the desired RPM, and then we can pretty much forget about it. Sometimes constant speed propellers are compared with the transmission of cars. This analogy compares higher RPM settings with lower propeller resistance to lower gears and lower RPM settings with higher propeller resistance to higher gears. Please note that this is just an analogy, and in reality there are no gears, but just different blade angles. At the start of the takeoff run, the high RPM setting, together with the low aircraft speed, results in the smallest blade angle. That compares to the first gear. Then, as the aircraft speeds up, the governor automatically increases the blade angle to prevent the propeller from overspeeding. That compares to automatically shifting to higher and higher gears. When we reduce to maximum continuous RPM, the governor again increases the blade angle so that the propeller provides more resistance and spins slower. That again compares to shifting to a higher gear. After leveling off, the aircraft again accelerates, and the governor again automatically increases the blade angle to maintain maximum continuous RPM. That again compares to shifting to higher and higher gears. Finally, after reaching cruise speed, the pilot reduces to cruise power with cruise RPM. Again, this increases the blade angle and compares to shifting to a higher gear with better fuel economy. Therefore, a constant speed propeller has many gears and is able to provide full power over a wide range of aircraft speeds. From the start of the takeoff run to climb out and cruise flight. Furthermore, it gives the pilot a choice between lower gears with higher RPM or higher gears with lower RPM and better fuel economy. In contrast, a fixed pitch propeller compares to having just a single gear. This single gear must be a compromise between takeoff and cruise. Therefore, it is selected for some in-between speed. Consequently, this single gear is too high for takeoff and can't deliver full power during the takeoff run. And it is too low for a high-speed cruise, and therefore we have to throttle back considerably to prevent the propeller from overspeeding. Therefore, a fixed pitch propeller means less power at both ends. At takeoff and at cruise. And this brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed our illustration of the inner workings of a constant speed propeller. We have seen how a constant speed propeller is able to maintain a constant propeller speed by changing its blade angle. Thereby, it can deliver full engine power over a wide range of aircraft speed, from low speed, medium speed, to high speed. The advantage of a constant speed propeller is better performance and a reduced workload. If you want to give FOFSIM a try, you are welcome to do so. FOFSIM is free and no installation is required. A link to the newest version of FOFSIM is in the description below. Thanks for flying with us, and we hope to see you on board again soon.